Hello and welcome. Today we are doing a video on witchcraft in ancient Greece and Rome. There's a lot to talk about here. In fact, this could be a 2-week class, honestly. There is so much evidence and so much information. It's a bit overwhelming, and I have tried to condense this down into what we can talk about in a single video. We are not going to be covering mythological or literary characters, right, when we talk about witches, because there's no need to. There's so much evidence here that we don't need any literary evidence, right? There's so much real evidence. What I will say about the literature is that Medea, Erichtho, Canidia are all going to be depicted doing grotesque things. They're monstrous, right? They're monstrous women. They're going to be eating flesh of corpses. They're going to be resurrecting the dead. They're going to be talking to demons, etc. The question is how much of an exaggeration is this? What we're going to see here in our real evidence is that it frankly may not be an exaggeration at all. It may simply be a depiction of the very worst of real life cases of witches found in the period. Much of this stereotype seems to come from the necromancer. Now, the necromancer is a foreign idea, right? All this magic, it's from Persia, it's from Egypt, it's foreign, right? And the Romans don't like foreign, especially when it comes to their religion. And so the Romans are going to have a very poor opinion of witchcraft, especially, and even magic over time. It's going to evolve. They're going to be issuing laws and edicts banning witchcraft, and throughout time. And this is going to be not even be Christian Rome. This is going to be pagan Rome. It actually gets better in terms of witch hunts and accusations of witchcraft go way down once we get to the Christian era. It is the Roman pagan religion that is after magic. Why might this be? When we look at the real evidence brought forward here, we're going to see that it is very likely that there is a correlation between evil magic and the damning of magic in general during the era, right? When we look at the curses, the Greek curses tablets, and then we look at the Roman ones, over time they're getting more and more diabolical. They're getting more evil, more vile, more repugnant as time goes on. Necromancy, human sacrifice is starting to come into play the later we go. The idea of human blood rituals. So it seems as though, well, there has always been evil magic users within the magical community, right? And it seems that these evil magic users are growing in number and becoming more vicious as time goes on, and that it's very possible that the Roman response is in direct correlation with that. Plato is going to remark on the typical state of affairs in Rome. Beggar priests and prophets go door to door of the rich and persuade them that they have the power acquired from the gods by sacrifices and spells to cure with pleasures and festivals any wrongdoing done by the man himself or his ancestors. And, this is key, that they will harm an enemy, a just man or an unjust man alike, for a small fee, if they so wish. Right? So we have practitioners of magic who are openly soliciting their services to do evil things, right, for a fee. Cassius Dio is going to remark on magic: you should hate and punish those who introduce foreign elements into our religion. From this are born conspiracies and gatherings and secret clubs, which are the last thing a monarchy needs. Do not then permit people to be atheists or sorcerers. 33 BC, actually 139 BC, Chaldean astrologers are going to be cast out of Rome. They're going to be banished from Rome. 33 BC, astrologers, magicians, driven out of Rome. Augustus, 20 years later, is going to order all the magic books in Rome to be burned. At least 2,000 of these are going to be burned. 16 AD, magicians, astrologers banned throughout all of Italy. Get out of our peninsula. Okay, these edicts were reinstated by Vespasian and Domitian in 89 AD. The edicts, the trials, etc. against witches are just going to get worse until the conversion of Christianity. Ironically, that's going to be a break for everybody when it comes to this. Now it's time to get into the nasty stuff, the real stuff. When we talk about the worst form of magic, it is definitely going to be necromancy, right? This involves communing with the dead. This could be done to perform exorcisms, remove poltergeists, find out who killed the said person. Often these are more devious purposes, though, they're going to be using for this. And necromancy comes to be seen as evil for several reasons to the Romans. One, looking through all the seven, this is what I've determined. One, the Romans believe it is unnatural and against the laws of nature. Two, it is causing the ghosts unnecessary pain and disturbance. 3. The sorcerer is mutilating or damaging the corpse involved in these rituals. 4. Evil individuals are summoning ghosts for evil purposes. 5. Evil individuals are purposely summoning demons to commit evil acts. 6. It is becoming increasingly apparent that some necromancers are committing human sacrifice. The basics of ancient necromancy are this. The necromancer takes a human corpse in order to commune with. The necromancer would typically wear black clothes, funeral robes, right? The location could be anywhere, but the ritual was most often performed inside a cave or beside a body of water. The ritual had to take place at night, as I believe that's when the ghosts were most active. They would try to do this on a full moon. The necromancer will then sacrifice at least one black animal to both the corpse and the god. Usually this is a black sheep, a ram, a goat, sometimes black puppies, etc. They would then implore Hecate, or Persephone, or Hades. Some of the magic papyri mentioning even using human blood rather than animal blood for these rituals. The blood sacrifice is followed by the sorcerer doing one or multiple of the following things. Pouring blood into the corpse's mouth. Injecting blood into the corpse. Eating portions of the corpse and or sexual intercourse with the corpse. This would then be followed by circling the body while speaking the incantations of resurrection. Literally, the idea was either reanimating the corpse or evocation, summoning the phantom they could speak with. This was done for three main reasons. 1, find out how they died or who their killer was. 2, learn information about the past, present, or future. And 3, enlist the ghost or corpse in assisting them with some task. Right. The spirit, it is noted, was often reluctant to return to the world of the living, and the necromancer would often have to pound on the ground or make extreme threats to the corpse or the spirit, such as placing a curse on them, in order for that spirit to appear. The spirit could then be released, it could disappear on its own, or it could be trapped and placed in a holding stone or a doll or an effigy, right? You could trap the spirit inside of the doll. Pliny mentions that these rituals often involve the sacrifice of an animal and then the removal of the heart, which was subsequently eaten by the necromancer while it was still palpitating. A second form of necromancy was ventriloquism, right? the medium would allow themselves to become possessed by a demon or a spirit and speak with the voice of that spirit, allow that to pass through their body, right? They would talk like they were the demon and answer questions for everybody involved in the ritual. Hydromancy could be perverted, right? Instead of using water, you could use blood if you wanted to do necromancy. One incantation records of a Greek magic papyri found, "I adjure you, spirit, traveling in air, enter this body, inspire, energize, and arouse it by the power of the eternal, and let it walk around over these place. For I am the one who acts with the power of Thoth," some deity I'm unfamiliar with. A Greek magical papyri offers a recipe for a ring that will supposedly allow the user to control the minds of others, open doors, inflict suffering and illness, call up the souls of the dead, and give prophecies. Another necromancy ritual written again on a papyri states to use the severed head of a wolf to summon a demon that can prophesy and send dreams and diseases. Another ritual advocates for the use of entrails of a human boy. Yet another ritual believes in the use of mirrors and writing the incantation in human blood upon the mirror, wherein they would be able to communicate and see the demon through the mirror they wanted to communicate with. Necromancy is going to be such a common phenomenon in the ancient world that you can see it in Greek myth, right? Clytemnestra is going to disfigure the corpse of Agamemnon so that he is so disfigured in the afterlife, right? But also that he can't return as a vampire of vengeance, right? She cuts off his hands, his feet, his nose, his ears, his genitals, and if that wasn't enough, she ties down the remainder of his body so that he can't, so he'll be disfigured in the afterlife. It's a curse upon Agamemnon, even through eternity, essentially. In the Argonautica, we see Jason perform necromancy on the corpse of Medea's brother, who he has just killed. He sucks the corpse's blood and spits it out 3 times in order to appease the ghost. The fact that these heroes in Greek myth are actively engaging in necromancy gives you an idea of how common it was, right? Curses. The curses are becoming more malevolent over time, right? And in the Greek world, it's not. In the Roman world, curses are becoming increasingly vile and insidious and mean, right? More so than in the Greek world, right? Apuleius was accused of practicing magic, and he was charged with it, and he had a trial in 160 AD. He gives a really good defense. He does, and he's very eloquent. He is a famous writer, after all. But in his testimony, he's actually going to be so bold as to curse the man who accused him right in front of the court. He's going to say, "But in return for that lie, Amalanus, may that same God who goes between the lords of heaven and the lords of hell grant you the hatred of the gods of either world, and ever send you to meet the shadows of the dead with all the shades, with all the fiends, with all the specters, with all the ghosts of all the world, and thrust upon your eyes all the terror that walks by night, all the dread dwellers in the tomb, and all the horrors of the sepulchre." It's quite the curse, right? There's going to be another curse, which is in a text. It was rolled up and found in a mummy's mouth, a woman's mouth with red hair. The curse reads, I, Lord Demon, attract, inflame, destroy, burn. Cause her to swoon from love as she is being burnt, inflamed. Go to the tortured soul, the heart of Carosa, until she leaps forth and comes to me, Apollos, out of passion and love. In this very hour, immediately, quickly, do not allow Carosa herself to think of her own husband, her child, drink, food, but let her come melting for passion and love and intercourse, especially yearning for intercourse with me, Apollos. What's very odd about this is that this is a dead corpse. It's found in their mouth, stuck in their mouth. Either this wizard was trying to get the woman to, I suppose, pursue him in the afterlife, or was hoping her corpse would reanimate and come for him. I don't know. Very odd stuff. Here's another tablet. Seize Euphemia and lead her to me, Theon, loving me with mad desire, and bind her with unloosable shackles, strong ones of adamantine, for the love of me, Theon, and do not allow her to eat, drink, obtain sleep, jest, or laugh. Burn her limbs, liven her female body until she comes to me and not disobeying me. More curses, of course. Cast your hate upon Demetrios and his tavern and their property and their possessions. I will bind Demetrios in blood and in ashes with all the dead. I will bind you in such a bind, Demetrios, as strong as is possible, and I will smite down Echinotos on your tongue. Yikes. You see what I mean about these curses getting more evil over time? We have a voodoo doll found in the 4th century AD of a woman. She is found kneeling with her feet together. The doll is the effigy and its arms tied behind its back. There are 13 pins pierced into it in the mouth, the head, the private parts. The effigy was wrapped in a seal. And on this text, it read, God, lead Ptolemy to me. Prevent her from eating and drinking until she comes to me. Do not allow her to experience another man except me alone. Drag her here by her hair, by her guts, and she does not stand aloof from me. There's more. Destroy, crush, kill, strangle Porcelo and his wife Marilla. Their heart, their soul, their buttocks, their liver. Last one. Crush, kill Fistus the senator. May Fistus dilute, languish, sink, and may all his limbs dissolve. These are quite some nasty curses witches are putting on people. Especially in an era when people actually believe in the power of magic. This is absolutely terrifying. People, which is why they're all wearing these protective amulets, right? Okay. Getting back to necromancers, we're going to find ourselves talking about accused witches or real-life witches, depending on what your opinion is. Vatinus, Nigidius Figulus, Appius Claudius Pulcher, and Sextus Pompey are all going to be believed to be necromancers in Rome. Cicero is going to accuse Vatinius of this in 56 BC. You who are accustomed to call yourself a Pythagorean and to conceal behind the name of a most learned man your monstrous and barbarian customs, what crookedness of mind possessed you? What frenzy was so great that although you have undertaken unheard of criminal rites, and you are accustomed to call up the spirits of the dead, and you are accustomed to make sacrifices to the ghosts of the dead with the entrails of young boys. The necromancer Porphyry argued that human entrails were better for necromancy because they were a higher form of being. Apollonius, who was accused, another writer, who was accused of necromancy, and particularly that of killing young boys, stated in his defense that animal entrails are better because the human realizes they are being sacrificed, and their anger ruins the entrails for prophecy. An unknown author in 20 AD writes about how upset he is that a 4-year-old slave boy was abducted and sacrificed by witches. Nero. Keep in mind, there's two things here about when they're accusing Roman emperors of necromancy. One, the Romans like to really slander emperors they didn't like. Two, these, and the same token, these are also really evil people, and I don't think it wouldn't be too shocking if they were, as an evil person, if they were interested in evil magic. We'll go ahead and continue. Nero. Really bad guy. Really, really, really bad guy. But he was said to have been a necromancer and to had devoted the immense resources of the Roman treasury to learning more about necromancy. He hired Tiridates of Armenia to be his chief necromancer and instructor in the art. Right? None of the attempts at necromancy apparently were successful. It was all just a giant waste of money. And Tiridates blamed the lack of perfectly black animals and the lack of human sacrifice for why his attempts did not succeed in necromancy. Right? Hadrian, Emperor Hadrian, was to be interested, right? Was believed to be interested in all sorts of divinations and sorceries, including necromancy. Hadrian even constructed an artificial underworld under his villa to commune with the dead. This was supposedly done to communicate with his dead friend or lover, Antinous, who is said to have drowned in the Nile. Alternatively, it is also said that Antinous was sacrificed by Hadrian for necromancy because a willing sacrifice was required. Didius Julianus was said to have killed many boys for magical rites, and Elagabalus was also said to have used the entrails of beautiful boys for the purposes of divination. God. Emperor Valerian Maxentius was said to have been heavily involved in necromancy, rituals that involve cutting poor boys' throats, sacrificing the children of poor people, and using the entrails of newborn infants for divination. Okay, that was Emperor Valerian. And Maxentius was said to have opened the wombs of pregnant women for the acquisition of fetuses, as well as using the entrails of newborn babies for divination as well as summoning demons. There's more, but we're just going to cut it off there. We're going to move on to the poisoners, okay? Nero, Caligula. Caligula was found to actually have a trunk of poisons in his domain. Vitellius, Domitian, Commodus, Caracalla. These are all gonna be accused of being poisoners. One that is obviously very famous, Locusta, was a witch that reportedly was hired by Agrippina the Younger to poison her husband Claudius. Locusta would then be hired by Nero to kill Britannicus via poison. Besides imperial famous assassinations, she was a poisoner who was, they believe, killed thousands of people. She was killed, condemned to death by the Roman Senate, one of two ways. One, she was publicly raped by a specially trained giraffe and then torn apart by wild animals. The alternate version is that she was dragged through the city in chains and executed. Locusta had apparently trained witches for years in the art of poisoning, and one of them was Martina, who was rumored to have participated in poisoning Germanicus. Placinia. Placenia is charged with their husband Piso for poisoning Germanicus. While the majority of the focus is on Piso, Placenta does get charged with being involved in dark magic and poisoning, and she's accused of being affiliated with Martina, who's a well-known poisoner, and that they were in cahoots in the plot. There are several cults in ancient Greece and Rome that lend to the idea of witches. The first we're going to talk about, in fact, the only one we're going to talk about, is the Bacchae, right? Those who worship Dionysus, or Bacchus, as he's called in Roman religion. The women who did this were referred to as the Manaids, or mad women. They were allegedly characterized by maniacal dancing to the sound of loud music, whirling, screaming, drunken, inciting each other to greater ecstasy. The rite climaxed to Dionysus' climax with the tearing of a bull apart with their bare hands, an act called sparagmos, and eating its flesh raw, that is, the flesh of the bull. Having done this, the cultists were supposedly then possessed by Dionysus. In 186 BC, the cult was abolished under Roman law. 2,000 of the members of this cult were put to death. We see a lot of evidence for real happenings of witchcraft, right, during the era, right? We obviously have a whole list of terrible spells that we have read and that were written by witches themselves. The idea of needing to use human blood in some rituals. The spells needed to do necromancy, that is, eating parts of a corpse or sacrificing someone, a human, or casting diseases or curses. So, and those are these real life witches who, they're writing this stuff down, and that's what they're saying they're doing. It's no surprise then that these literary characters, right, of Medea and Canidia, they're awful, right? They're really just awful creatures, and they seem to embody the very worst aspects of the witch. We don't know how many of these people were actually practicing that stuff, right? A lot of the examples we gave today they probably weren't practicing that stuff, especially when it comes to the emperors. Although, to be fair, most of the emperors listed were pretty evil people and certainly had the resources to get involved in evil magic. They are known to be quite sadistic, so it wouldn't surprise me, but given the Romans' propensity for rumor, it's no guarantee. But yes, we can see that there's plenty of evidence written by the witches themselves that they're engaging in these types of behavior, right? Evil behavior. And in that, because of this behavior, it's very likely that these actions are what causes witchcraft to be so terribly persecuted, right, in the ancient world. And eventually all magic to end up being persecuted in the ancient world, right, is because of the actions of these necromancers, right? We think of the necromancer, what are we talking about? They wore black robes, right? They met under the full moon at night, sometimes in caves, sometimes outdoors. They summoned ghosts, they summoned demons, they ate parts of corpses. Some of them, apparently sacrificed children, right? I mean, that's your idea of the witch, right? That all comes from these necromancers that are very real and very disturbed individuals. Is this all fantasy? Probably not. I wish it was, right? There's too much evidence here, right? To claim that these people didn't exist. You know, we had, just in the last 70 years in the U.S., we've had John Wayne Gacy, a cannibal who ate people. We've had Charles Manson starts a cult, murders people. We've had what happened in Waco, Texas. We've had plenty of serial killers that believe themselves to be vampires or werewolves. And this is in the time of modern medication for psychosis and other illnesses, right? Which they didn't have back then. So the idea that we're allowed to have insane, dangerous individuals, right, today, but ancient people aren't allowed to have them, right? They didn't exist back then. It's ridiculous, right? And I think we're seeing a terrible stereotype created over time, because of these necromancers, of magic users, because of necromancy, right? We look at, where did all this anger or dislike for magic come from? Because it's not just happening with Christianity, it's happening with the Roman pagans. It's happening in parts of Persia. It's happening in the Holy Land, right, the Middle East. And I think a reason for that is these necromancers, and that the practice is, well, rather sickening, right? It can be rather disturbing. And so it looks like that is potentially an impetus for witch trials in the ancient world, and eventually the banning of magic in general. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this. This was a tough one to do. This stuff is really nasty. It was hard to research. Again, there's 2 or 3 weeks worth. We could do a 30-hour video with all the evidence I found on this stuff. So, yeah, we're not going to do that. But this is a summarization of what give you an idea of witchcraft in the ancient world. So, yeah, the stereotype of the witch is a real one, right? It's just not from the Middle Ages or the Renaissance. The real idea of the witch as an evil practitioner of magic is here in the ancient world. It's just gonna, the mythos carries on later on to later times. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this. Certainly we can go ahead and say, right, this has nothing to do with Wicca or paganism today, right? The fact that there were evil witches back then, right? And interestingly, the vast majority, if not all, the literary characters in Greek and Roman writings are women, right? Of all the witches are women, for the most part. Now, there are a few men, but for the most part, they're all women. The interesting thing is the vast majority of the people put on trial in the Roman world for witchcraft are men. These accusations are going out against men over and over again. So it isn't until later that the literary portion, right, the literary mythos is going to spread its stereotype and women get focused on. But if we think of who would be a necromancer in ancient times, in reality, it was more likely to be a man than a woman, right? Because they were going to be more likely to have access to this kind of, to be able to learn this kind of weird occult stuff. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this, and have a great rest of your day.